pursuit of greatness. I know people don't usually
Are you 17th century greatest samurai of all time, Miyamoto Musashi?
No, dude, I'm just you in a wig.
Yeah, makes sense. So what does it mean to be great? Ancient philosophers from Marcus Aurelius to Confucius all arrived at the same conclusion, that greatness is the complete mastery of oneself. And not just your own skills or your character, but being a person that elevates the people around you through those actions. But Miyamoto Musashi took it one step further. He gave us a roadmap to greatness. So who was this guy? Miyamoto Musashi is widely regarded as the greatest samurai to ever live. He was undefeated in a total of 61 duels, and thus given the honorary title of Kinsei, or a sword saint, given to those seen as the holy master of swordsmanship. Musashi's rise to greatness started when he was just 13, challenging a samurai visiting his town to a duel, beating him to death with just a wooden staff. Musashi picked up the way of the samurai and continued this trend until he was about 30 years old. He then retired to a cave in his older years, where he devoted himself to writing, meditation, and reflection. There he composed his great works, The Way of Walking Alone and The Book of Five Rings. The Book of Five Rings is what we'll be focusing on today. This book serves as Musashi's guide to combat and strategy. However, due to his philosophical approach, we can take these teachings and apply them to our everyday life. In his own words, if you see the way broadly, you could see it in all things. He has many gems like this scattered throughout the book, and all you have to do is look at it through that kind of lens. In particular, I'm going to focus on a passage from his ground book, which covers the 4 ways to pass through life. There are 4 ways in which men pass through life, as warriors, farmers, artisans, and merchants. Although he frames these as different ways to pass through life, the true wisdom lies in taking lessons from each of them and applying them to our own lives. I'm going to go through these in a different order than the way he mentioned them to drive my point home here, but pay attention, because the last one's the most important. First, the warrior. The warrior is someone who uses their great skill to overpower their opponents and take steps closer to greatness. The warrior and the current day athlete are synonymous in this sense. Cristiano Ronaldo, Michael Jordan, Serena Williams, these are all probably just some of the names that you thought of as soon as I said the word great. In fact, many people think of athletes when it comes to greatness. But why is that? Well, most of us grew up playing sports at one point in our life or another. And in this spirit of competition, there's a lot to be learned. Not only about yourselves, but about life. And oftentimes these athletes that we idolize have trained diligently and hardly their entire lives to be able to step on that stage with the best and compete for that status of GOAT, greatest of all time. So what is it that separates the GOAT from the rest of the pack? Shouldn't the person with the most raw physical talent or natural gifts just naturally be the best? Well, not exactly. See, Musashi warns us that if a gentleman dislikes strategy, he will not be able to see the benefit in his weaponry. Michael Jordan, for example, was never the tallest, strongest, or fastest in the NBA, but many still refer to him as the GOAT. You know why? Because he mastered all these in-game aspects, offense, defense, psychology, but he coupled that with his elite in-game intelligence to dominate the competition. The warrior teaches us that not only should we have complete mastery of our skills, but intelligent use of them. Second, the merchant. Now, the merchant is something you guys are all probably familiar with, whether it's your friend trying to sell you their Forex course or the 1,000th Instagram clothing ad you've seen. But this isn't what makes the merchant great. See, what makes the merchant great is they're able to utilize their resources and make something out of nothing. Or at least that's how you and I see it. In reality, the merchant is able to pinpoint the resources around them and combine them to make something greater than the sum of its parts. People like Steve Jobs, Jay-Z, Oprah Winfrey, they were able to combine their resources and make something great, but they weren't always like that. They didn't let their humble beginnings or their environment deter them from reaching those heights. In fact, these people are no strangers to failure. People like you and I, we may have this fear of failure that stops us from reaching those heights. We view failure as the opposite of success, while in reality, failure is a necessary step towards it. Every failed idea, every business plan that doesn't work out, every loss of money, it's a step towards finding out where the money actually is, and more importantly, figuring out where it isn't. See, the merchant teaches us that greatness isn't about having the best resources. It's being able to find value where others don't. Third, the artisan. Ever watch a movie trailer and instantly know it's a Tarantino or a Wes Anderson? This is definitely a form of personal branding. What if I told you this is also how the artisan rises to greatness? See, Musashi tells us, the way of the artisan is to become proficient in the use of their tools. This shows us that we all must become experts within our own craft. But that's not all. He continues. First, to lay his plan out with true measure, and then perform his work according to the plan. This shows us that the strength in the artisan lies not just in expertise, but also being able to lay out a plan and follow it. It doesn't sound like much, but being great is simpler than we actually think. Many greats of the past have used this formula to etch their names throughout history. Claude Monet, for example, was a legendary painter. He had extraordinary artistic vision and brush technique. His works were known for their masterful use of color and received critical praise throughout his career. But later in his life, he was diagnosed with cataracts. As his eyes deteriorated, his paintings became more yellow, more muddy, more distorted. The scenes he'd painted his entire life now looked completely different through his failing eyes. But that didn't stop him. Monet kept pursuing the plan he had laid out for the years before him, and painted away even when his own eyesight fell short. In trying to push past his physical constraints, he accidentally created something new. Those flawed paintings that he hated, they became some of the first examples of abstract impressionism. Monet kept painting even when it seemed pointless. He was so devoted to mastering his craft, following his plan, that even in his failures, pushed art into uncharted territory. The artisan teaches us that in order to be great, we have to be able to lay out a plan and be confident that our skills will be enough to take us to where we need to be. Ta-da!
I was there to push people beyond what's expected of them. I believe that is an absolute necessity. Otherwise, we're depriving the world of the next Louis Armstrong, the next Charlie Parker.
One artisan you might be familiar with is Andrew Neiman. And yes, he may not be real, but bear with me. Terence Fletcher says something very interesting in this scene. He mentions that what he does to his students at Schaefer is a necessary evil in order to push them towards greatness, and that if he doesn't push them towards those limits, he's depriving the world of the next set of greats. Now, I'm not telling you to have a J.K. Simmons inner monologue every time you fail. This type of damaging behavior is what pushed Neiman to the brink of insanity in the first place, but rather to put yourself in a position where it's all or nothing. You are capable of far more than you think when the odds are stacked against you. And remember, not reaching your potential is not only a disservice to yourself, but to the entire world, depriving them of something that only you can offer. But there is a danger in obsessing over greatness. Andrew Neiman, much like Monet, had a plan, and he stuck to it with ruthless discipline, practicing until his hands bled, pushing away the people he loved, sacrificing everything, no matter the cost, in the name of the plan. But there's a difference between Monet and Neiman. Monet's plan served a higher purpose, to capture the art and the beauty around him. But when his eyes started failing him, he adapted and started creating that impressionism art that we know today. Neiman, on the other hand, served only his pride, become known as the greatest drummer alive. When obstacles came, he didn't adapt. He destroyed himself in the name of the plan. When on the road to greatness, it's important that we keep our ego and our intentions in check. All the names I've been throwing around might have given you the impression that to be great, we have to be either famous or billionaires. And while these people do tend to be great, greatness does not have to be loud, but having our legacy cemented as great does. Steve Jobs, for instance, was a visionary and an expert in selling his product to the masses. But his engineers were all great in their own right, weren't they? We must remember that while being remembered as great does require us to garner some recognition, the true definition of greatness is the mastery of oneself. Fame does not equal greatness. Fame is just a byproduct process for some greats. And last but not least, we have the farmer. The farmer is the most essential path as it ties everything together. When you think of a farmer, who are they? They're someone that rise before dawn, get their work done, tend to the crops, tend to the cattle, and they do it all without a thing in the world. The food that's put on your table is all thanks to the farmer. It's not glorious, it's not flashy, but it's necessary. But does consistency like this mean rigidity? Not really. See, Musashi tells us that the way of the farmer is to use agricultural instruments and see springs through to autumns with an eye on the change of the season. Now let's focus on that last part for a bit here, with an eye on the change of the season. Adaptability is a very strong powerhouse tool for the farmer. When drought comes, they switch out the crops they're using or their irrigation systems. When blight comes, they tend to their crops and cure them. When their cattle is invaded by some type of predator, they install necessary countermeasures to protect them from that. See, the farmer is consistent with their discipline, but flexible with their approach. The pairing of this consistent discipline and this flexible approach is what makes the farmer so great. Nowhere is this clearer than France's legendary vineyards. The most famous wine regions from Burgundy, Bordeaux, Champagne weren't created just in a decade or even a lifetime. They're created over hundreds of years from generations of farmers. Today's multi-billion-dollar wine industry would be irrecognizable today without the fruits of labor of people we may never know. Where the warrior emphasizes strategy, the merchant their resourcefulness, and the artisan their skills in planning, the farmer uses the most important thing, which is consistency. They show up day after day, no matter what conditions they find themselves in. They understand that greatness doesn't come in one dramatic moment, but rather in the small things that you do every single day. The farmer doesn't wait for motivation, they just show up. Taking advice from just one of these paths and ignoring the rest undermines the wisdom that Musashi has given us in this book. We must follow them all cohesively so that we can really grasp this wisdom and achieve the greatness that we all deserve. And remember, greatness isn't just one specific moment you reach in life, it's a continuous way to live it. So go, be great.